Olá, alunos de Design de Materiais. Nessa aula eu vou mostrar para vocês, vou fazer um seminário demonstração e vou mostrar para vocês algumas instruções para vocês fazerem esse primeiro seminário de maneira remota. Então vamos lá, vamos começar. Well guys, first of all, I uploaded on our Moodle here guiding questions for your seminar, okay? So these questions, they are based on chapters 8 and 9 from the book that I've been using, Graves. And these are the questions that I answered in my seminar, and you are going to answer, of course, to prepare your seminar. Well, I organized my seminar like this, in a Word file where I'm going to answer the questions and make comments on them, and using the PDF file at the same time. You could, for example, use slides. This is an example with a slide, and there is a comment that says, it seems the book seems to be organized around grammar points. And then slide number 2 is a print screen of the book where you could explain what you're going to comment. But I'm not using slides here. I'm going to use Word file and a PDF file going back and forth, explaining what it is. And these questions are for you to analyze a unit from a textbook. The unit that I'm analyzing is Unit 4 from Interchange 2. And to be honest, I couldn't find the date that this book was published, but it's not very new. I believe it's about 10 years old, but I'm not sure. Well, the plan of the book, it seems to be organized around grammar points. This is my first comment on the book. And why? Let me show you why. So I'm showing here the plan of the book, which is usually the first pages of the book where you see the title, topics, the functions, the grammar, and then it's like an index. It's like the table of content of a book. And why I think it's organized around grammar points? Because there are 3 columns. The first column is the title of the unit. The second column describes the functions of language students are going to practice. And the third column describes what grammar points are going to be studied. And as I said before, when I explained some parts of the book that I was using for this course, Graves' book, usually a textbook is organized around a topic. So for example, this one seems to be, it is organized around grammar points. It seems to me that the authors thought of which grammar points are important for this level, which is low intermediate to intermediate. So which grammar points are important for this intermediate level, and then what functions of language could be practiced using these grammar points. And then they would come up with a title for the topic, for the unit. So for example, Unit 1, the title is A Time to Remember, and the functions are introducing yourself, talking about yourself, exchanging personal information, remembering your childhood, asking about someone's childhood. So how do you remember, or how do you talk about, oh my God, my dog is barking, I'm sorry. How do you talk about your past? So the grammar point is past tense and used to for some habitual, actions. Eu costumava, right, used to. So it seems to me that the authors thought about a grammar point, for example, past tenses, and then what can you do with past tenses? And then the authors thought about functions of language that could be useful. And then the title, A Time to Remember. Okay, so it seems to me that it was organized around grammar points. Next question is, there are 6 questions on the overview of the unit, and then some questions about the sequence of the activities, which was the topic of last class, of our last video. And then some general questions. I'm going to start with here, question number 1. What approach can you recognize? Well, I recognize the communicative approach, and to answer this question, I will have to go through all the others, especially the sequence of the activities, to show you why I think it's a communicative approach that the book is following, okay? Number 2, do activities help students develop skills that are transferable to other languages, for example, reading and writing skills, socializing skills, etc.? My answer is yes. The topic itself may be considered neutral. I'm going to show the topic to you. And the text conveys useful information, a common topic among people. Now, I answered this question. Let me show the book to you. It's Unit 4. Let me go to Unit 4 in the PDF file. Unit 4 is I've never heard of that. The grammar point is I've never heard. You see, it's present perfect. And the topic here mostly is food. And another grammar point is adverbs, I believe. I don't remember, I'm going to see later. Well, the question was, let me go back to the question. Do activities help students develop skills that are transferable to other languages? Yes, because the book shows some conversations where if you talk about ethnic foods, for example, this is something that you can do in any language. We usually talk about our preferences, even in our native language. And I also said that there is an interesting text. Let me go down there to the text, which is eating for energy. And then it shows the food pyramid. I'm sure you've heard about the food pyramid, you know, the types of food you should have on the top of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid, you know, carbohydrates and fat and fiber, etc. So the reading part is about food pyramid, which is a very interesting, useful information. So yes, the unit gives the students opportunity to transfer knowledge learned in English to other languages, in this case, their own native language. So they can talk about their preferences. And we do that, right? We even in Portuguese, you talk about if you like or don't like some types of food. And this text, which is about the food pyramid, is a very useful information. Are there opportunities, question number 3, are there opportunities for authentic communication? Are texts semi-authentic? What is here, semi or semi? I wrote in parentheses and authentic because if you remember last class, authentic text is a text found in real situations. For example, a newspaper's authentic text, or the news in general, you know, CNN.com is an authentic text. And if you create a text only for pedagogical reasons, it's not authentic. And Graves calls semi or semi-authentic texts the one that were originally authentic, but then they're used in a textbook. So the author calls it semi-authentic text. So are they authentic / semi-authentic texts? My answer is that they aren't authentic, but teachers could provide students with authentic communication as they speak about their preferences. So the texts here, they seem to be created for the textbook. So they seem to be pedagogical because I haven't found the source of these texts. Although, for example, food pyramid, usually you can find an authentic text about food pyramid, but this one seems to be created for the book, for the textbook itself. So it doesn't seem to be authentic. But it's not a problem because teachers could bring some extra material, for example, and bring a real food pyramid, could bring, for example, magazines that are about health, health issues, etc. Question number 4. What are the opportunities for discussing culture? Well, my answer is food is culture. Food is culture because we eat every day, supposedly, and we eat what our country provides, right? So talking about food is talking about culture in general. Like, for example, why do we eat rice and beans? You know, this is totally culture. So the topic itself is already cultural. Lucky for the authors, they don't have to go deeper in this topic, the cultural topic. Do activities help students develop social awareness? Well, the activities, my answer is, the activities not necessarily, but a teacher could bring a discussion about, for example, bath soup stereotypes. So this is one example. So if you're talking about food, you could also talk about the pandemic we're living, okay? Because supposedly it came from food, from ethnic food. But we also have to be very, very careful not to stereotype, not to be prejudiced, not only stereotypical situation of eating ethnic food and the connection with the pandemic, but also a way of critically discussing this without being prejudiced, right? Well, this is one very sensible topic that could be discussed, but it's sensible. And another type of social awareness would be talking about hunger in the world, right? So yes, I said we eat every day and this is part of our culture. We eat every day because we have food in our houses. So talking about hunger in the world or bringing some statistics, like for example, hunger in Brazil comparing to other countries, that would be also an interesting way of bringing social awareness. The unit itself, I analyzed from exercise 1 to the last one. The activities themselves, they do not bring social awareness. This is part of the teacher's job. Although I do not have the teacher's book here, maybe, I don't know, the teacher's book, because the teacher's book has some instructions. Maybe the teacher's book would give the teacher some ideas of how to discuss social awareness, but the activities themselves, they do not. So it's our job, it's our role to try to bring some social awareness, and this social awareness is related to the hidden curriculum. Remember this class about the hidden curriculum, what is behind the activities, if there are some, let's say, prejudices or some sensible issues behind the activities. What else? Number 6, are activities varied? Yes, they provide students with opportunities to practice the 4 skills. They're varied because you start with small talks, and then there is conversation, there is listening. The topic itself is food from the beginning to the end, but there are many ways of talking about food. So this is also interesting. There's also, for example, a recipe. Even people who don't like to cook, they have other opportunities to talk about food in other ways. Okay, so yes, they're varied. Well, these were questions about the overview of the unit. Now, about the sequence of the activities. Question number 1 is, do activities start with students' previous knowledge to engage them? So yes, let me go back to the book. The book here starts with what we call pre-teaching or warm-up activities. There are pictures of ethnic food, Brazil, Thailand, China, and Latin America. And then Brazil is feijoada, Thailand, microbe. Sounds like microbe, but it's not. Crispy fried noodles with shrimp and chicken. This is Thailand. China, there is a picture of wonton soup, which is chicken soup with pork-filled dumplings. Dumplings são os bolinhos chineses. Latin America is ceviche, which is raw seafood marinated in lime juice and chili peppers. Well, there are pictures of these 4 dishes, and then talk about these questions. Have you ever tried any of these dishes? Which ones would you like to try? What other ethnic food can you try in your city? What are 3 popular dishes in your country? So this is a warm-up activity where students talk about some personal issues to engage them in the topic that they're going to discuss more deeply later. And if you notice, usually this warm-up activity, the pre-teaching and warm-up activities, they usually bring subtly the grammar point to be studied. Like here, have you ever tried any of these dishes? So present perfect is already here for them to, so they are being introduced to present perfect without explanations. So have you ever tried? They should understand, se você já experimentou. If they don't understand, the teacher could simply say, você já experimentou, okay. But no explanations on grammar just yet. This is just for them to be engaged in the activity, in the topic. Then, yes, this is number 1. If the activities start with students' previous knowledge. Yes, when you start talking about your own experiences, you become more interested in the topic to be discussed, right? Because it's very difficult for all the students to be interested in the topics. It's impossible. But one way of trying to bring students' attention is to start with their previous knowledge. Number 2, do activities go from a more controlled practice to an open-ended practice? How knowledge is built up from one activity to another? My answer is yes, there are controlled practice before open-ended practice, which are the pair practices in the book. And there is a vocabulary build-up activity before a pair practice. I'm going to show you one by one. So the first activity is to engage students, as I said before. Then there is a conversation with a script. So it's not an authentic conversation. It's just created for the book. This conversation will bring the vocabulary and grammar point to be practiced. And because it has a script, it's for students to pay attention to pronunciation of the words. So it's not a reading activity, it's not a listening activity, but when you listen and read at the same time, you are paying attention to pronunciation. And it's also input. Everything is input. Then the rest of the conversation does not have a script, so students have to listen. The rest of the conversation is a listening activity, okay? Then number 3 is a pronunciation activity. As I said, when you have a conversation that has a conversation which is taped, so students are going to listen to the conversation and read at the same time. Usually it's because they should pay attention to pronunciation of the words. And then it's not a reading interpretation, it's not a listening activity because they have the script, it's usually for pronunciation. So this is why to pay attention to pronunciation, not to practice just yet, just to pay attention. But this is why there is a pronunciation activity right after that. Because, okay, you read and listen, and then you pronounce correctly. You practice pronunciation by practicing, Then number 4 is the grammar focus. There is a grammar chart, which is not very long, because grammar in a communicative approach, grammar should be in context and not too much, too much explanation or too many details. So there's usually a grammar chart, a short grammar chart with phrases that were usually some phrases that were in the conversation that the students read before. And then there's this exercise, complete the conversations, then practice with a partner. So it's a controlled practice. It's a controlled practice for students to practice present perfect together with the vocabulary they are studying, which is related to food. And it's because they have to complete the conversations, it's totally controlled. It's not a free conversation. So they should write, fill in the blanks first, and then after filling in the blanks, after completing the conversation, then there is a pair work. The pair work says, take turns asking and answering the questions in part A, in the previous part. Give your own information. Pay attention to the pronunciation of did you and have you. Okay, so here in this pair work, after doing the exercise on pronunciation, after studying grammar, after doing a controlled practice, they're going to have a free conversation giving their own information. This is totally related to the communicative approach. Authentic communication, because they have to give their own information, and after the activities that will provide them with self-confidence to do the activity. You cannot just ask students to start speaking without providing language for that, without providing some vocabulary and grammar. So that's why they do some controlled activities and then a free practice. After this, there is a listening activity. Excuse me. There is a listening activity. And this listening activity will build up some vocabulary to use later. And there's a lot of vocabulary, food-related vocabulary in this listening activity. Then there is a pair work, which is based on this listening activity. But, okay, so far they have studied the grammar point and they have done some controlled practice and also a free practice. This is another free practice, but now using the vocabulary that they learned through the listening activity. So the listening activity builds up the vocabulary they're going to need for the activity that comes next. And then there is another activity where they're going to check, put a check on their preferences. There is a chart with types of food and also how the food is done. For example, bake, fry, roast, boil, barbecue, or steam. Here it's also vocabulary build up. They're building up vocabulary that use, for example, the methods of cooking and the types of food. So, for example, baked fish, and so on. So it's also a build up vocabulary type of activity. And then after studying this vocabulary, bake, try, roast, boil, barbecue, steam, and all of the types of food, they're going to talk about it. They're going to talk about their preferences. If you prefer, let's suppose, baked fish or fried fish or boiled, if it's possible. No, it's not possible. Well, anyway, then they're going to talk about their preferences and also if some things are possible. And again, there is another conversation with a script for them to read and listen to. And then listen to the rest of the conversation is a listening activity, and everything starts over again. So with a more controlled practice, because now the second part, it's another grammar focus. The grammar focus now is the adverbs. So the first part was present perfect, and now the adverbs. But so everything starts over. A conversation in which the adverbs are used, in which the target vocabulary is used. So it is a way of introducing the students to the target vocabulary. So there is usually a small text, which could be a conversation, a recorded conversation. It could be a small text to present the students with the target vocabulary and target grammar. That's the function of this conversation here. So listen and practice. They should listen to the conversation with a script. Sometimes they repeat. So the listen and practice means that they should repeat. So when they are repeating the conversation, this is part of autolingualist approach. Why? Because repetition leads to a good pronunciation. So repetition is important. Not only for pronunciation, but you're repeating some sentences, and you memorize the syntax of the sentences. As I said in other classes, the problem with autolingualism is that repetition is good, but they didn't go to the second step, which was real communication. And this one goes to real communication. After repeating, then they talk about their own lives. Well, anyway, there is a conversation for them to read and repeat, and presenting the target language. Then a listening activity, which is the rest of the conversation. A grammar chart. Again, it's a short grammar chart. Repeating some sentences that were in the conversation, because as I said, the function of the conversation is to present the language, the target language. And then there is a controlled practice, which is a recipe, but the recipe is already here. They have only to match the sentences with the pictures. So they have to match, and this is input language and controlled practice. And then there's a pair work, which is an open-ended question, open-ended activity. So the recipe where they have to match sentences and pictures is a controlled practice. And then after matching, after having all this language input, now they're going to have the language output, which is the pair work. And then it goes on and on, building up vocabulary. There's another pair work after a listening activity that will bring some new vocabulary. After a listening activity on food, then there is a pair work for them to talk about, let me see, choose one of the recipes you heard about in part A. So one of the recipes you heard in the listening activity. Can you remember how to make it? Compare with your partner. So they're going to talk about the listening activity they had. Group work. Take turns describing how to make your favorite snack. Then tell the class about the most interesting ones. There are some models for the students to follow. For example, what's your favorite snack? It's, and then the students complete. What ingredients do you need to make it? You need, then students complete. So these questions here are there to, these models are there to help students on how to start, because sometimes they just tell them, okay, now speak. They don't know where to start. For advanced students, no problem, but basic and intermediate students, you need some prompts like these ones, some models for them to follow. And finally, there is a writing activity, which is for students to write a recipe. And then they should exchange recipes and talk about it, okay? Well, If you noticed, these sequences, the sequence of the activities, they start with a controlled practice to build up vocabulary, to present the grammar point, and after that, students are going to have a free practice using the vocabulary and grammar presented by the texts, the conversations that they read. And they also have to read and repeat the conversation to practice pronunciation. And it's done in parts. It's not like all the vocabulary, all the grammar, and then the conversation. It's like grammar and vocabulary and conversation, some more vocabulary and conversation, some more vocabulary and conversation, right? So that students can practice in parts. So this is the sequence of the book, which I believe it goes, it is exactly what the book's, Graves' book says it should be, right? So it is, let's say, it is in the correct way of presenting the activities. Then question number three is, are there opportunities to recycle target vocabulary? Remember that last class I talked about multiple encounters. You know, vocabulary is learned through multiple encounters. You have to see the word, the target word, target expression many times until you memorize them, until you, not memorize, but learn, until you really learn vocabulary. Well, my answer is yes, as the topic is the same all over the unit, so students have the opportunity to practice because they're talking about the same topic. And also there is a review. After Unit 4, there is a review of Units 1 to 4 so that students can recycle. Okay, not only vocabulary but also grammar. And then, in general, what do you like about the author's approach to materials development and what don't you like? Well, my answer is it's clean and hence agreeable to the eyes of the student. Well, I believe interchange is so famous because yes, it is clean, you know, it is agreeable, it is students don't get overwhelmed or lost in the middle of too many texts and pictures all the time. You know, I've seen some books, for example, that have many topics in one unit. So you start talking about food and then you go to say, I don't know, hobbies. And then from hobbies, because food is cultural, hobbies are cultural too, and then from food you go to hobbies, and then from hobbies you go to something related, let's say places to go on the weekend. Although they could be related, it's just too much information in one unit. In this one, it's not like this. This one is very clean. It's linear. I mean, there's a text, and then below the text there are activities. It's not all. I've seen some other books, for example, that have a text and beside the text, I mean next to the text, for example, on the left, and then too many pictures on the right, and it's not very clean to look at. So this one is clean. This is what I mean, and I think it's easier for students because it's linear. It's easier for students to use. What else? The writing activity. Well, this is the part I don't like. The writing activity is left to the teacher to build up. He or she would have to be sensible enough to teach the characteristics of this textual genre, to bring students some samples so that students are more confident on how to start. Well, this is actually a general criticism that I have for textbooks in general. You see here, writing. Write a recipe for an interesting dish. First, list the ingredients you need. Then describe how to make the dish. And then there are 2 lines here of an example. And this is usually what happens. Well, recipes are not difficult. You know, we usually know that the ingredients and then how to make it. But usually it's just like this. Okay, now you write something and there's no explanation on the textual genre, which is very important. Students should be aware of the characteristics of a textual genre, Portuguese or English, you know, any language. So I think this usually not here, but usually the writing activities should be more explained by the teacher. And there's another question that is not here, I don't know why. Which activity you would adapt and why? Well, I've mentioned this before. For example, I would bring some material to make students socially aware, to bring some social awareness. So, for example, talking about the relation between ethnic food and the pandemic, always paying attention not to be prejudiced, and also, or talking about how to be healthy, for example, or talking about hunger. So I would, hunger in the world, comparing to Brazil, some statistics. So I would bring some extra material to talk about some social issues that are not in the text, because, well, I believe because the authors are trying to be neutral. They're trying to be, they're trying to avoid sensible issues, which usually happens because this book is international. It could be used, it's English as a second or foreign language. It could be used by Brazilians. It could be used in any country. So in this case, authors are usually, they try to be say neutral. They try to avoid sensible issues, but I believe critical thinking is very important in any type of course, English course or any other one. Critical thinking is very important, and in my opinion, not only my opinion, but I'm saying this based on scientific papers and academic books. I'm saying that we should bring some social awareness to class, something related to the topic that is being discussed. Well, this is my analysis of Unit 4 from Interchange, and I already uploaded the questions on Moodle for you to use as a guide for your seminar. There is also here on Moodle, there is also a link for you to upload your video. So how are you going to do this video? Let me open the file here with instructions and I'll tell you. Well, here in the instructions, the questions below were based on Graves chapter 8 and 9 about material development. You're going to use them to guide you when analyzing the unit of a textbook. So the questions that I just answered in my demo seminar. Then instructions for the seminar. You will record a video of your seminar. You can choose to film yourself with a cell phone, for example, or to record the computer screen the way I did. If you choose to record the computer screen, you have to use a software. I'm using OBS Studio, but you can. My husband uses Loom for Chrome. This one, Loom for Chrome. If you use Loom, you can record the screen of your computer, but with your face in the corner, in a small screen in the corner. But here OBS Studio doesn't show my face. Well, these are the ones that I know. Of course, if you know others, you can use. If you use a physical book, I use the PDF file, but if you use a physical book, you can scan it or take a picture, or you video record yourself showing the textbook. You know, if you film yourself presenting the seminar, and then you video record yourself showing the physical book. If you use a PDF file, you just do the way I did, for example, showing the PDF file here on the screen. The deadline is in 2 weeks, according to our teaching plan. Do I have the teaching plan here? No, it's not open. I'm not going to open. I'm going to tell you. According to the teaching plan, you were going to present the seminars on May 11 and 18. But because we are in this situation, which is not our fault, but because we're in this situation, you're going to record the seminar and send it to me in 2 weeks. Next week, which is May 11, supposedly, you will be preparing your seminar. So we're not going to have classes, but I'm gonna enter our virtual classroom on Collaborate to answer questions if you have any. We won't have classes. I will just be on call, é tipo plantão de dúvidas mesmo, as a standby support in regular hours from 7:30 to 10 p.m. Okay, it's not a class, I'll be there. If you have questions, if you're doing the seminar, you don't know how to do some things, or you have any other questions about our course, you just go to the virtual class and I'll be there. I mean, just waiting. I'm gonna do my stuff in the computer, and I'm gonna probably be correcting papers, I don't know, but I'll be there, on call. Vai ser plantão mesmo. According to the teaching plan, the seminar is worth 20% of your final grade. And can you do in pairs? Well, if you manage to do this in pairs or small groups, I'm okay with it, but please follow the World Health Organization recommendations, okay? And how are you going to send it to me? Send me the video through cloud computing. Per my experience, I believe you won't be able to attach a video to your email, but if you do that, if you're able to do that, I'm okay with it. But I believe you have to use cloud computing. So you could upload a video on YouTube or your Drive, and then you send me the link. You can send me the link via Moodle or by email. You could also try to upload the video directly on Ava Moodle, but I think it won't work if the video is heavy. So right here let me go back to, I'm opening Moodle here, and then you see Seminar 1. Please upload your video here or share the link to your video. So you're gonna click here and upload. The interface here for me is different. Ver todos os envios. Para vocês vai aparecer de alguma forma como dar o upload. Daí você dá o upload ou o vídeo ou o link pro seu vídeo. Se for via e-mail, quer ver? No Message, você vem anexar e aparece aqui Browse Cloud Locations. Então você pode anexar como cloud, na nuvem, né? No caso, como no seu Drive, ok? Então vocês vão ter que de alguma forma achar um jeito de dar upload no vídeo em algum lugar, no cloud computing, e me enviar. Então as instruções estão aqui, Student Seminar no Moodle, tem as questões que vão guiar vocês e o local para vocês darem upload no vídeo ou enviarem por e-mail. Eu acho que eu disse tudo, não devo estar esquecendo mais nada. Bom, eu vou encerrar por aqui então, e se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida, vocês entram em contato. Até mais!